Coach, we were just talking about some things getting ready for the show, and one of the last things you told me was about a key women's matchup this weekend. So as we enter the Final Four weekend, the last weekend of college basketball, which thing are you most looking forward to seeing?
Well, Chad, it's a lot going on. I mean, again, there's only one Power 5 conference school in the NCAA Final Four, and that's Miami, an ACC school, and I think they were a fifth seed. In the NIT, one Power 5 conference school in the NIT, that was Wisconsin.
Yeah.
That's very, very interesting. The women's tournament is a little bit different, knowing that number one USC and number one Virginia Tech made it. But Virginia Tech plays LSU, which will be a great game on Friday, and University of Iowa plays University of South Carolina.
And that's what, I wasn't thinking about that coming in, but when you mentioned that, that might be the single most exciting game, with Caitlin Clark of Iowa against the juggernaut South Carolina.
And they might give South Carolina. It'll be interesting to see if University of South Carolina can guard her. Nobody else has.
Right.
She's averaging 30 a game in the NCAA tournament.
42 points in a game, along with a triple-double in the most recent outing.
The most of any player, men or women, in the history of the final of playoff basketball. So it's a lot going on. But again, I think what sticks out in my mind again is that the Power 5 conferences who got the majority of the at-large bids are not representative in the Elite Eight or the Final Four, like you would think. And take, for example, Conference USA, whose winner of the tournament was Florida Atlantic. If Florida Atlantic don't win their conference, they don't go to the NCAA tournament. Here they are in the Final Four. Now, what's worth talking about is that the NIT final is two Conference USTA teams too. University of Alabama, who's won at Birmingham, who's won 29 games, and North Texas State, who's won 31 to 32 games. And Florida Atlantic has won 33 games.
Yeah.
They all in the same conference. To compound that, the CBI champions was UNC Charlotte, another Conference USA team.
Yeah.
So if Florida Atlantic is lucky enough, it's a big if, but if they're lucky enough to win the NCAA Final Four, the NIT will have a Conference USA champion between UAB and North Texas, and UNCC has already won the CBI. That would be a triple crown that nobody's ever done.
Right.
But this is full of things that nobody ever done. This is the first. Chad, do you know in the NCAA, in the men's bracket this year, there's not another one seed.
Right.
That's never happened before.
Not a number one seed that made it past the Sweet 16.
Yeah.
Not even among the Final 8 teams, let alone the Final 4.
And you come to think about it, in the Final Four, there's not a number one seed, not a number 2 seed, or a number 3 seed.
Yeah.
In the Final Four.
Right.
And so there are 2 5s, a 4, and a 9.
Yes.
And so everyone's, and I'll admit, UConn's kind of ran the gamut, and they've beaten everybody. But again, I don't know if UConn was in another region, if they were in the Midwest, the South, or the East region, would they have beaten everybody by an average of 22.5 points?
Right.
I think because some things occurred, and with Kansas getting knocked out, and also UCLA getting knocked out, Northwestern's, people like that, Arkansas, it just made UConn's route a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Although they beat the Zags, and they beat them in convincing fashion. So again, I think we've been talking about it all year about how complex the Division I basketball culture is right now, and then you throw in the transfer portal. man, I think this is just what the future is going to look like. Then getting back that a topic and a subject we talked about last week, the number of African-born players or descendants of African-born players. Like I watched a kid from Utah Valley last night, 6'9" or 10, unbelievable player. You just wait, and there are going to be kids that played in the NIT Final Four, Elite Eight, and things like that will not be at their current schools next year, because I guarantee you the Power 5 conferences are going to recruit out of the NIT, the CBI, and that's going to make basketball just that more competitive. And then you throw in the NIL that some of these schools are offering. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see once the smoke clears and things have filled out, that where do kids at UAB, North Texas, UNCC, Florida Atlantic end up next year, especially with the coach from North Texas is going to be the new coach at Texas Tech.
Yeah.
How many of those kids from North Texas does he take with him to Texas Tech?
Yeah.
Or do some of those players from North Texas end up at other Power 5 schools as the kids at UAB, as the kids at UNCC, and otherwise? Because what's happened in the past week, Chad, is transfers are out of the whack. I mean, there are people transferring that you never thought would transfer. Look at Love at North Carolina.
Is he in the portal?
He's in the portal. The leading scorer is in the portal. Yet, I think North Carolina just signed yesterday the best player from Brown. Okay, because remember the Ivy League is the only conference in the country, Division I conference, that they don't have a transfer rule. And so you play 4 years and that's it. So these kids have a 5th year of eligibility. I thought the big kid from Princeton,
he's
center, 6'9", really, really
point center. He's dribble the ball. Tosin and Wabu are thinking.
But guess what? I doubt if he'd be at Princeton next. He's going to be somewhere in a Power 5.
Back-to-back player of the year in the conference. I thought I watched 2 full games of him. One, the loss to Creighton. The other one, the win right before that. I guess it was Missouri. I thought he was the best player in the tournament that I saw.
There's no question. He's 6'9". He can play inside, play outside, and again, it just again shows you how difficult. Now, the thing I'm thinking about, and we talked about the African players, like in 15 years from now, because of what's going on in Africa and the NBA influence and the shoe companies' influence, there won't be a Division I team in the country without an African player. I mean an African-born player. And I see it a lot like what happened to Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball, for the first time this past year in the World Series, that was won by Houston last year. In the World Series championship game, there was not an American-born African-American player in the game. That's the first time since 1948 when Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier that happened.
Wow.
But what you see happening, though, is that Major League Baseball is full of Caribbean, Latin,
like Venezuela,
Cuba, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, and all of that.
I shouldn't have said Venezuela. I meant Dominican Republic. That's what I meant.
So again, and what I'm comparing it to is that's what's going to happen, because what is occurring is that, and you talked about it a little bit last week about a lot of the kids are back-to-back players and big players and all of that coming out of Africa, and that is true. So as teams continue to want the 6'8", 6'9", 6'10", 6'11", 7-foot player, they're going to be coming from Africa. So what started, and we talked about a little bit ago with Mutombo and Olajuwon and Manute Bol, and then the kid now playing for Philadelphia 76ers.
Joel Embiid.
Embiid. that's going to be the norm.
Yeah.
It's almost the norm now.
Right.
I think Florida Atlantic has an African player.
San Diego State
has an African player.
Yep.
UConn has a
Yes.
very good African player.
They sure do.
Miami doesn't have an African player, but they have the kid in the middle.
Yeah.
Is from and he's not that big.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing about Miami's not very big.
Yeah.
You know, their tallest player that starts is like 6'7", 6'8" at center.
Right.
But again, as you and I talked about, they have outstanding guard play.
Yeah.
And everyone in the tournament that's still left have outstanding guard play and good big men.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be interesting, and I can't wait to see the outcome.
Yeah.
So asking you right now, Chad, who do you have in the San Diego State Florida Atlantic game?
Okay, I'm going with San Diego State. You and I both picked them to beat Alabama. Kind of proud of that one.
Right.
But then I did not follow through and expect them to beat Creighton. I thought Creighton's offense was going to be enough. But so I learned my lesson on picking against San Diego State. Their strength and competitiveness on defense, I think, it's like an overwhelming defensive presence that they have. I think they held Creighton. They were talking about at halftime. Creighton had 33 points, and they were saying how well they were running their offense. I think they were shooting well over 50% from the field. Well, they ended that game with 56 points. They scored 23 points in the second half. Creighton did. One of the best offenses in the country. San Diego State holds them to 23 points. Now, in the game before that, San Diego State held Alabama to 23 points in the first half. So in the two games last weekend, they held two very good teams to halves of 23 points twice. And so I'm going with San Diego State to beat Florida Atlantic. I honestly haven't watched a full game of Florida Atlantic yet. Obviously they're a dynamite team. Who they beat most recently, that was obviously a surprise.
Kansas State.
Kansas State. So obviously a great team. They've been beating everybody in their way, but I'm going with San Diego State.
Okay, and then the last, Miami and UConn.
Miami and UConn. It's probably not a sensible pick to pick against UConn with, like you said, they've been beating teams by a wide margin over and over again. But I'm still going with Miami. I had no real faith in them being able to beat Texas, especially when they got down by 13 in the second half, and guys like Isaiah Wong, and they've got Wong and Pack in that backcourt, but those other two guys, I want to say Miller, and then the other guy Joplin, maybe number 55. Those when Pack and Wong were held in check in the first half or so of that game, those other guys like Miller, I want to say he didn't miss a shot from the field or the line the whole game.
Miller, Super Miller, Miller highlight.
Right.
He did something that hadn't been done but once in the NCAA, and it was done in 1992 by a Duke player. Do you know what Duke player it was?
1992. I'm gonna guess. Hang on. It wouldn't have been Christian Laettner.
You're exactly right.
Was it Christian Laettner?
Yeah. Kristen Laettner in the game where Grant Hill threw the pass that he caught and shot at the free throw line to beat Kentucky
game.
in the final eight.
Yeah.
In the Elite Eight to go to the Final Four. Kristen Laettner did not miss a field goal.
Right.
Or a free throw.
Wow, I did not know.
Well, Miller the other night broke that record after 21 years of that record. And guess who called Miller the next day?
Kristen
Laettner. Congratulating him on it and said, "I'll see you in Houston."
Oh, that's great.
Wasn't that pretty good?
Oh,
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
So you got Miami beating UConn.
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Now, my thing is going to be San Diego State, FAU. I'm going to take Florida Atlantic.
Okay.
I've been with the underdog all
Yeah,
year,
yeah.
and I know it's crazy,
Yeah.
but
It's a Final Four full of underdogs,
yeah,
right?
Right. and 3 of the 4 teams in the Final Four have never been there.
Yes. Well, they said San Diego State from the Mountain West, and I guess UNLV's in that conference now, but when UNLV had their dominant teams of the past, they weren't in the Mountain West. I guess they would have been in the WAC back then, or Big West maybe. Well, they said no representative from the Mountain West has ever even reached the Elite Eight, let alone the Final Four, until this year.
And so I'm gonna take FAU there, and then Miami, UConn. I have to go with Miami.
Okay.
Even though I think UConn is playing really well, and the reason I'm going with Miami is that some almost 40 years ago, 39 years ago, Bill Foster and I resurrected the program at the University of Miami. And I've spoken to Coach Jim Larinaga and told him that Bill, because of being at the University of Miami, and Terry Holland, who Larinaga worked for at Virginia, and Bill and Terry were such close friends. I said, Bill and Terry are dancing in heaven now for you.
Yeah.
And he texted me back with a thumbs up. Exactly right. And
that's his thing, dancing.
Yeah.
You saw a lot of highlights of that.
And he was dancing.
Yeah.
And so I'm just awfully excited for the University of Miami. So what I'm picking, you got San Diego State in Miami. I got FAU in Miami. And the thing that's exciting about FAU Miami, FAU, barring traffic, is not but a 30-minute ride from the University of Miami, in Boca Raton.
Yeah.
Maybe 45 of an hour with traffic.
Yeah.
But who would have ever thought that 2 South Florida schools would be in the Final Four? And that's another thing about how this thing is set up, is that it would seem like FAU and Miami, being so closely approximated with each other, would play each other in the regular season.
Right.
But guess what? They don't.
Right.
And now that begs the difference. Why not?
Yeah. Well, you've been talking about it this year because Miami has nothing to gain, right?
Right.
I mean, Florida Atlantic says, hey, come to our place. Miami says, no, we don't have anything to gain.
So who you got between San Diego and Miami?
Well, I think we're gonna end up picking the same winner here. So I'm going with Miami. The way they can score the ball, I think that will good offense beats good defense in that pressure-packed game. I think they'll make enough shots. And San Diego State's offense, it to me, isn't its strong suit, and they'll kind of fold under the pressure of the championship
And I'm
game.
pulling for Miami. I'm betting with my heart
with your
here.
heart, yeah.
But I won't be mad if FAU wins it. And to be quite candid with you, I'm not mad if any of these 4 teams win the national championship.
Any of them is a great story.
And one of the best stories I heard all week. The best story I heard all week was talking to was it Bob? Which was it? Bob Hurley,
Danny Hurley.
Danny Hurley at UConn.
The coach of UConn.
Danny Hurley. I get he and his brother mixed.
Sure.
Hurley at UConn, and he said we were playing really good. They got off to like a 14. Start, or 14-1, something unbelievable, and they were playing really well. And then they hit the skids there, and they didn't play good for 5, 6, 7 games there. They didn't play well, and kind of lost their focus and everything. And he said I had to go and look at myself, and he said I was spending too much time fighting with the referees, and he was known for that, fighting with the referee. And he said I'm not doing that anymore. And guess what? He said it's made all the difference in his team, in the way they approach things and everything. And now he's focusing on team. There's a lot of coaches out there that could learn from that.
I agree.
That leave those referees alone.
Yes.
And pay attention to your team.
Yes.
And I think that's a mature thing that he's gone through. And it takes a heck of a coach to say, I need to back off of this.
Yep.
And there's been a lot of controversy. Especially in the Elite Eight, was it a foul or not a foul?
San Diego State Creighton, the ending of that game.
Well, guy had his hand on the hip, it's a
Yep.
foul.
Yep.
You call it, you
Yep.
know. I would wish they would have had that referee calling the Kennesaw State game.
Yeah.
A foul is a foul. Call it.
Yep.
And then the play, the next game was it Miami and
Texas would have been the next
Texas,
one.
the box out. The
Right.
kid boxed out hard,
Yep.
great boxed out, but he boxed out so hard he went up under the guy.
Kept going. Yeah.
That's a foul.
Yep.
Great box out. He hold the box out,
Yeah.
but when he went up under the guy, and everybody said, "Well, how can they change the call?" They changed the call because now, with less than 2 minutes in the game, you have what? Instant replay.
Yeah.
That's what it's there for,
Yeah.
helping the referees get it right.
Yeah. It's such a hit or miss thing because, I don't know if who would that have been that he was boxing out. That'd have been the big guy that we can't
Big
remember
guy,
his
yeah,
name
yeah,
from the
not-
other country.
Yeah,
He's a great player.
not Miller, not.
He's the first guy to get a scholarship from his country.
Oh yeah.
Oh man, it's a country that faces its share of problems. But but anyway, he jumped. If he stays on the ground, they don't call
They
it
don't
because
call
then
it.
you're just backing up, blocking
kept
the guy
backing
out.
up.
But when he jumped in the air, that forced him to go head over heels. And so I think they look at it, they say, man, he didn't do anything wrong by jumping. You're cutting his legs out when you continue to back up into him.
And the only thing about San Diego State and Creighton I like is that at the end, on the throw-in play, and then the referees called the game, there never was an explanation of what had occurred.
Yes.
Later on, when Gene Steristock came on, basically on stage with Charles Barkley
Yes.
and all of them, and it was a big controversy about what happened.
That was a great segment. You had Jay Wright weighing in.
Right, and everything, but the guy said what had occurred is that when the referees went over there, when the ball was thrown in, it was touched. The shot guy did not hit the shot clock.
Exactly.
And so if he would have did that like he's supposed to, the game would have been over.
Yeah.
And so what he said, when they figured that out, they had to go to an old-fashioned stopwatch and put it on. This is when it's touching everything, and that's why the game was over.
Yep.
So they made the right call eventually of what was going on, but it just left it out there like, what just went on. You just called the game like it was a bad thing. But, I tell a story a lot of times. I had a good friend named Eddie Payne who passed about 2 years ago, and he was, we were assistant coaches at the Clemson University together. We were the young guys on his first staff in 1977. And Eddie was a really good player at Wake Forest University, a preferred walk-on who earned the scholarship and was MVP of like the 1975 ACC tournament as a walk-on.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason Eddie was the MVP, he played a heck of a game, and he throws a pass in the semifinals, or in the semifinals, to a guy who catches it and makes a shot on the buzzer, full length, catches it, makes a shot, and they win. They beat North Carolina.
Right.
So Dean Smith is irate.
Yeah.
Because he says Eddie stepped on the line
and
throwing the ball in.
Yeah.
And so it goes like that. But this is the best part of it. They get to the press conference afterwards, and Dean Smith is ranting and raving about it. Eddie Payne was over the line and everything, and they got to the press conference, and I think Eddie was playing for Billy Packard then.
Okay.
At Wake Forest, and they said, Eddie, Coach Smith said that you stepped across the line. He said, Coach Smith might be right, but that wasn't the first call the referees missed tonight.
Yeah, for sure, sure.
And so it just gets back to it. So it kind of, where you sit at that time.
I totally agree. And that's why I think that they should not. I mean, I know this will never happen, but once you start, you can't stop. But I think they shouldn't have replay at all because refs miss calls just like players miss shots and coaches make mistakes. Like, we all make mistakes. Why do we have to correct the mistakes of the referees? We can't correct any other mistakes. That's kind of where I come from. And it also, like, that end of that game, they throw it length of the court, the ball goes out of bounds, the clock says 0, the buzzer goes off, and the San Diego State players come rushing on the floor to celebrate. But then you heard like 23 whistles, beep, 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 and you knew, we're going to replay.
Right.
20 minutes later, to your point, without even a real explanation, they say game over, and you don't really have a celebration now because it's been 20 minutes. Everybody's been standing around. And so I don't like the fact that at the end of every close game, it seems like there's no real spontaneous celebration because we have to go and check every last thing on replay.
Well, technology, Chad, is taking over, and it's just a sign of the times. It's just like now with the thing about baseball, about the strike calls.
Yeah.
It's not, and they can ask to re-look at that.
Yeah.
Tennis,
Yep.
the line judge for years. I mean, sometimes, and you have a son that plays tennis, and I used to play a little bit myself. I mean, that ball can be so close to being in or to being out,
Yep.
And now they got camera zoom that shows you exactly if it's in or out.
That's right.
Yeah. And so it's becoming such a science, man. It's becoming such a science. And then I'm just hoping that they don't go to automatic replay other than the last 2 minutes of the game.
Right.
Because you never get a game over.
Right. It would take all day.
It's like the pros now. If somebody disputes anything, even the college players are now doing this finger like this, reviewing. Everybody's reviewing. And then the other thing that's so funny is that in these arenas now that all with these mega
the
boards
jumbotrons
and jumbotrons and all this kind of stuff, whenever a guy gets a foul called on, a coach gets a foul, the first thing they do, they look to the Megatron and say, "You're wrong here." So it's out of control, man. But guess what? I don't see it getting any better.
No,
and then will it be a day where robots will call the game?
Well,
I don't know.
I know in tennis it's that way. Like, they just look at the computer and see if it was in or out. And I guess that's what they're doing in baseball with the strike zone. Can't imagine it in basketball. Like, was his foot on the line? Who hit it last? Was that a foul or not? I can't imagine a computer deciding that, but maybe one day.
And I found something out the other night I didn't know when James Starrstar was talking about the guy throwing the ball in. He said, in throwing the ball in, the baseline, I thought if you touched
any part of it,
the baseline, you were in.
Yeah.
He said you have to go over the line.
So your foot can barely be touching it as long as it doesn't stretch over
the line.
Wow.
And but guess what? I
can't believe that's true.
But what worries me, Chad, is like the 3-point shot.
Yeah.
Is that if I shoot the 3-pointer, if my foot is on that line, it didn't say my foot had to be across that line. If my foot's on the line, it counts as a 2.
Yeah.
So I don't know why throwing the ball in and my foot's on the line doesn't count as a violation.
It almost makes me think that he was wrong, but he's like the head of all the officials everywhere, so I can't argue with him.
Right.
But like, hey, if one of my friends would have told me, as long as you touch the line, you're okay. You got to be all the way over it. I'd be like, you're full of it, man. You don't know what you're talking about. But that guy's saying it. I got to be like, okay, I guess he's right.
So that's tough.
Yeah,
that's tough. And so
that's kind of like the over and back rule. You know how like 1 foot, 2 foot ball and all that. I still don't know that rule.
Well, I tell you what, and that just goes back to showing how tough a job that referees have. Now, one of the things that I expressed is, and I know this shouldn't make a difference, but I was the Houston-Miami game, which I think was a high-level game, and you have 3 referees. And I look on.
You mean Texas, Miami, did they play right before that?
Houston and Miami played before Texas.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead. Houston, Miami,
and in the Sweet 16.
Yeah.
Getting to the Elite 8, and Miami won.
Yeah.
And should have won. But there you had Houston with a majority African American team, 5 players to start African American. Same thing with University of Miami, African American players. But yet the referee crew was all white.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying anything wrong with that being all white or all
Sure.
black, but I just find it in this day and time
Yeah.
to have that many players out there and there's nobody refereeing the game that look like that.
Yeah, yeah,
You
I
know,
understand.
and that's an issue, and that's something we have to be dealing with as these referees try to make it to the next level. You know, of trying to do like Ted Valentine is still being suspended from the NCAA tournament based on something he did back during COVID when him and some guys went out to eat.
Yeah.
You know, Ted Valentine is one of the best officials that's ever officiated the game.
Right.
Tony Green is one of the best officials that's ever refereed a game.
Right.
And I think we miss something when you don't have a Tony Green or a Ted Valentine doing the Final Four.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's a lot going on. But I tell you what, man, this season has been unreal.
It really has. You know, and something you brought up at the very beginning about, you know, only one Power 5 team in the Final Four, that being a 5th seed, Miami. You got a Mountain West, you got a Conference USA, and you've got a Big East. You know, only one Power 5. So something that, you know, predicting the future is like impossible. I guess we can see it with our brackets. You know, everybody's brackets, you know, were blown up 2 weeks ago. Predicting the future is so hard. So when the NIL thing came out, you know, there's all these predictions of the most the wealthiest schools, the schools with the biggest budgets, with the biggest following, are going to dominate because they're going to have the most money at their disposal to throw at high level recruits, and so gone are the chances of the Cinderella. And that couldn't have been more wrong. You know, NIL comes out, transfer portal comes out, and basically somehow, some way, if anybody benefited, I guess it's the smaller schools, the mid-major schools. Who would have predicted that?
Oh, I know. And then you think about it too, Jed. I mean, UConn is representing the Big East, but it could have been very well 3 Big East teams. I think Xavier and Creighton were both quality teams who didn't advance from the Sweet 16, but they were all in the Sweet 16.
Marquette?
With a chance. Marquette got beat in the finals of the, you know, before the Sweet 16.
Okay.
But you see again, and what we've been looking like we're sitting here for a tournament of 3 Big East teams.
Right.
That showed that the Big East is stronger. What I'm thinking, Chad, is that there's so much parity in college basketball right now, and there's so many good players and great coaches that we are all getting the benefit of it. And then, and somebody was saying the other day, well, ticket sales are down now because, you know, with all these underdogs and stuff in the tournament. I'm saying that's crazy. That should make you want to go more.
I agree.
To see it.
I agree.
That you're not saying, well, just because we're Duke or Kansas or we're one of the Blue Bloods or Kentucky, we're going to bring all these fans.
Yeah.
That makes a great Final Four. This is a great Final Four, and I love it because at the end of the day, none of the teams have. 3 of the 4 teams are their first time being there, and just the opportunity to get there to do that. And I'm so happy for Coach Larry Nager at 73 years old. There he sits in the tournament for a second time in the Final Four when he took George Mason to the final, beat UConn. You remember that?
Yes,
in the game to go. And so that's what the Final Four, that's what March Madness is all about. And someone says, well, you know, which Cinderella would put on the slipper? Well, you know what? This year you got 3 Cinderellas all fighting to see who wears the slipper.
That's right.
That's not bad.
Well, and you mentioned in UConn, all of a sudden UConn's the blue blood, the favorite of the Final Four. And you mentioned Christian Laettner earlier. I remember when he made that little double pump, threw it inbounds, got the pass back, made in the Elite Eight to beat UConn to go to the Final Four. At that point, UConn had never been to the Final Four. Now, since then, they won 4 national championships, became a household name. But before, when Christian Laettner was ruling college basketball, UConn was one of these other kinds of teams, one of these teams that you would be shocked to see, competing for a national championship.
Well, I think the other thing that's interesting, too, and I heard just yesterday a little bit, is that Florida Atlantic, this is their last year in the Conference USA.
Yeah, you've been saying they're going to the Big 12? No.
They going to the American.
That's right, AAC, which is where UConn was until a couple of years ago.
And UConn got smart. They got out of there.
Yeah, right.
They were in a tougher league than they were in the Big East. But anyway, but also with that is that I heard yesterday that 2 teams that we've been talking about, Kennesaw and Liberty, will be moving out of the Atlantic Sun, going to Conference USA.
Nice.
So what's happening is that the trickle-down effect of the SEC expanding and the Big 12 and the Big Ten expanding and the Big 12 losing Texas and Oklahoma to the SEC, and therefore now the Big 12 had to go get Houston, Cincinnati, and Central Florida.
Yeah.
And then that league had to go into the USA conference to get teams to fill that.
Yeah.
And now teams in the Atlantic Sun are moving up. So it's a constant movement, and people don't recognize that. But it also gets back to the fact now that how the game is played now. And I hear Charles Barkley and everyone
He's always complaining.
I hate the NIL and I hate the transfer portal. But, it is what it is.
Yeah.
And as soon as coaches get beyond that and say, it is what it, because you know what? I've yet to hear Coach Larinaga, who's 73 years old, who is probably having some of his best coaching going on, because what Coach Larinaga has done, he's adjusted to the game as it is currently played.
Yeah.
And so that makes sense to me. It's kind of like, coaches will say, well, he's a certain kind of coach and he can only play with it. Great coaches take whatever talent level they have and get it done based on that talent level.
Well, and it's funny because like Barkley, I love listening to Charles Barkley. He's about the only guy that can benefit from saying, I hate how the college game, I hate NIL. I think he called it like a travesty, a tragedy, and all this stuff. He can benefit from doing that because we all like listening to it, and it's entertaining. It's like, Charles speaking his mind. But, he's an entertaining person. I, as a fan, can even say, I hate that. I wish it were like the old days or whatever. But if you're employed as a coach, there's no future in you being negative about how things are. The only positive future is in adapting, like you said.
Leonard Hamilton, Florida State, great coach, didn't have a great year this year. And he said, I didn't do my job in the transfer portal. Yeah. But he said on national TV, but I got the memo.
I love it. I love it.
And so again, it's exciting, Chad, and I think we'll have a great week of basketball. NIT, men's Final Four, women's Final Four. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of history going to be made. I'm looking forward to the women's game, the first round matchups between University of South Carolina and Iowa, and LSU and Virginia Tech, as I have anytime. Dawn Staley kind of threw the gauntlet down. She said, come on, LSU, let's make it all Southeastern Conference final. Do you don't think that Iowa and Virginia Tech got that pin up on the walls, man? That was good locker room stuff.
For sure.
Good coaching.
And I've got to check out what the NIT schedule is, because I'm sitting here as we've been talking. I'm like, okay, Friday night appointment viewing, especially South Carolina versus Iowa women's. That might be the most the most highly anticipated single game of the weekend, and then Saturday and Monday, of course, Final Four.
And I think if I'm not mistaken, I think the NIT championship will be Thursday.
Okay.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, then there you go. Thursday, Friday, Saturday,
and so
Monday.
we'll have UAB playing North Texas on Thursday night, and then we'll come back Friday night with the women's game, Saturday with some games.
And then I guess the women will play their championship Sunday. Is that how that works?
Okay. And they went back to that, and that's the way it should be.
Yeah.
Women on Saturday. And then the women are in Dallas, the men are in Houston.
Yeah.
It's like 3 or 4 hours apart. It's good for Texas.
Great.
Yep. So
great stuff.
Good luck, man. We'll talk next week on what happens.
Wrap it up.
It's a lot, man. This has been a great year of college basketball. And this is only the tip of the iceberg because I even see it getting better in the years to come.
I agree.